welcome to episode 8 of the second season of Reflections of a Slightly Conscious Being. I'm Sandra, a music artist that is on a journey towards consciousness. I am not a licensed psychologist, therapist, or coach. All information I share here comes from personal experience and doesn't mean to replace any kind of professional help. Today is episode 8, and I chose a topic very dear to my heart. Conventions. Are they worth following? Something that I think it was born with me is when someone says something needs to be a certain way because that's the convention way of doing it, I always question it. I'm like, but why is it this way? And does this way make sense to me as an individual and unique person? So ever since I was a child, this is something that was, well, it was also always very respected from my parents, and I thank them a lot for that. But it's something that's very unique of me. So ever since I was a kid, I remember challenging conventions. And one example I can give you is ever since I can remember when I was a kid, like 3-4 years old, I always hated to greet people. So it was something that, greeting is a universal convention, but then different cultures in different countries have different way of the greeting is slightly different, right? For example, here in Portugal, we greet by kissing both cheeks of the other person. That's how we greet. It depends. I mean, if you are a woman, you always greet someone with 2 kisses on both cheeks. Well, 1 kiss in both cheeks. So, mwah, mwah. But if you're a man, men, when they are greeting other men, they also use the handshake. But when they are greeting other women, it depends on the context. Sometimes if it's a professional context, the handshake is more used, but universally speaking, it's 2 kisses, 1 on each cheek. It's stupid. I went to France and everybody kisses, even between men. And I remember seeing that for the first time. For them, it's normal. It's their convention. But when I saw it for the first time, I was like, oh, wow. Because I've never, for me, seeing 2 men kissing on the cheek, it's something really exotic, because you don't see that in Portugal. So it's different from each country and from each culture. But here in Portugal, I really don't agree with the fact that it's different from, if you're a woman, it's different than you're a man. That's the part that I really don't get. But wait, it's the way it is. Anyway, when I was a kid, I had a really hard time. I really didn't like to be touched or kissed by people that I wasn't familiar with.
You can't touch this.
It's not that I had a thing with touch or kiss. I mean, with my parents and other people that I felt comfortable, it was totally okay. It was just with people that I wasn't comfortable with. As a child, I didn't do it as a challenge. I didn't want to challenge the convention. I really didn't want to do it. I really felt uncomfortable. And now this is a bit more accepted, but back in the 90s, I'm a 90s kid, most kids were just forced to do, there wasn't so much awareness of this kind of sensibility. So I really feel fortunate for having parents who never imposed that convention on me. They never forced me to greet anyone. So if I didn't want to greet, I wouldn't greet. And my parents would explain to people she sometimes is not comfortable, just please don't force her. So my parents would stay by my side and would defend my point of view, even when it wasn't acceptable by others. So I remember many times people scolding my parents, telling them that they should force me to greet them. So still they never did it. When I was older, I eventually came around by myself, again, never forced, and I started to greet people, but again, not because I was forced to, I chose to. Then one day, when I was a lot older, my dad actually told me that the reason why he never the reason why he never forced me to greet anyone was because when he was a child himself, he also didn't like to greet people. But his parents, my grandparents, forced him to do it. And he never forgot that. And so when he saw that I had the same sensibility, he chose to do different. And this right here is breaking generational trauma. Well done, Dad. Well done, Dad, and well done, Mom, as well. I mentioned my dad a lot more just because growing up, my mom was always very submissive to my dad. So my dad was the one imposing the rules. And that's why sometimes I talk about my dad a lot more. But truth is, my mom also never imposed that. So well done, Mom and Dad, for breaking generational trauma, for doing differently. And, I do feel nowadays people are very sensitive to their traumas. And I've mentioned many times here myself that many times that my parents did something that I wish they would have done differently. But I also think it's important. It's important to have that awareness, right? But I think it's also important to celebrate things that our parents got right. I mean, our parents are human beings. They are not perfect. And so, but I do feel like sometimes we kind of amplify what they did wrong, right? And we forget to celebrate everything we learned from them and all the things they done right. And this right here, it's something that I felt I love their approach. And when I become a parent myself, I will remember that approach. I mean, if my child doesn't want to greet anyone, she will never be forced to greet people if she or he doesn't feel comfortable with it. So it's something that they did right. So I want to celebrate it and I want to thank it. And I think it's so important that you do the same, celebrate things that your parents did right raising you. It's so important. And tell them about it. Tell them about it. Make them feel good about it, right? So greetings, again, going back to the theme, are a form of convention. Thing about conventions is that if you choose to do differently, most times you will get judged, right? Sometimes by others, sometimes even by yourself. I mean, if you choose not to follow a convention, you will feel embarrassed. It will be difficult. It will be hard because you're breaking a pattern. You're stepping out of the norm, right? I remember feeling embarrassed every time I chose not to greet someone with 2 kisses, but for me, the embarrassment was less disturbing than the act of greeting itself. I remember feeling bad for my parents, especially when I saw people scolding them for that. But truth is, I really felt uncomfortable. Conventions are a form of acceptable behavior. I mean, behavior that is considered acceptable, right? Rules, they are kind of these unspoken rules that if you follow, you are adequate and no one notices you. But if you don't follow, you are inadequate or you call attention towards yourself. So they set this standard to follow. But why do standards exist if we are all such unique creatures? I mean, you can defend for society to work, we need standards. But aren't all they really necessary? That's my question to you. I'm not saying I'm against all conventions, okay? In the terms of greetings, for example, I chose to change myself because I felt like every time I chose not to greet people would have this impression of me, like, oh, she's really sensitive or she's really odd. And I didn't want that. I wanted people to feel welcome and to feel open and to feel to feel welcomed into my life. I think it's important to show an open mind and an open perspective, and it starts with the greeting, with the greeting itself. And so I chose to adopt the convention. I like to give conventions some thought instead of just accepting them blindly. I like to understand if they make sense to me or not before accepting them. About greetings, I understand now why it was so hard for me as a kid. I remember when I was a kid, I remember thinking, but why is it so hard for me to greet people? And I couldn't understand why. Nowadays, looking back, it's actually really simple to understand. I'm very sensitive to people's energies, and I have really, really sharp senses. And I remember that some people, when would get close to me, they would smell really bad, for example. It's not that they smelled really bad, but the scent for me was very disturbing, okay? And I felt someone wanted to touch me, and I felt really uncomfortable with touch as well. But with time, I learned to regulate my senses and to increase my tolerance. So today I have absolutely no issue greeting other people. In this case, again, I decided to adopt the convention because it made sense to me to greet others following the standards. And even recently, I met a person that she loves to touch other people. I noticed that right away when I met her first in person. I mean, we had exchanged some emails, and then I met that person. I met her in person, and the first thing when she saw me was that she gave me a hug, and it was a really nice hug. And I felt really welcomed. I felt she had a really warm energy. I didn't have any issues with her hugging, but then throughout the conversation, we start talking about, I don't know why, but we start talking about she's being like that. She's very warm and she likes to touch people. That's the way she relates with others. She likes to touch people. And she started mentioning sometimes in her life that the touch was not very welcomed. And she was actually criticizing other people for seeing second intentions in her touch. And I could see where she was coming from. I mean, but I could also understand other people not wanting to be touched, because I was like that. I was very sensitive to touch. And it's not because I was seeing second intentions when people touching me. It's just I felt uncomfortable. And so on her case, it was the other way around. Touch was the way she connected with other people, and it was totally harmless. It was a friendly touch, but she was also not considering the other person's individuality and likes. And so she was telling me about a situation when she was asked not to touch someone that much because that person was getting uncomfortable, and that person's partner was getting uncomfortable too, and she couldn't understand it. She was only saying, people are so cold and people are so mean and they see second intentions on anything and everything. But sometimes I do feel like we also have to understand the other people's preferences and likes and dislikes. So if we want to be respected, we also need to respect other people, right? So on her case, it was interesting because then I remember, I was the other way around. I liked not being touched. Now I really don't mind being touched, and I could feel her warmth. I could feel her touch was really innocent and friendly and really warm, and it actually felt good to me. But I could also understand some people finding it too much. It's just preferences, and it's just respecting other people's preferences, right? So what about conventions that don't make sense to you? Should you follow them just because it's the acceptable behavior? So in the case of my friend that I was referring, she was more touchy. Well, not touchy, but she had a tendency to use more touch than the norm. And so she felt judged for it. So it was the other way around. I had a higher sensibility to touch, and I was judged for not wanting people to touch me or to even greet me. And she was discriminated for actually the total extreme opposite. It's just because we were out of the norm. We are both out of the norm, right? So I do feel like it depends. We have to remember that conventions are not just about us. They involve others as well. And that's why I was explaining and I was giving the example of my friend. Let me give you another example. Clothes. So we wear clothes by convention. It's a convention, right? Humans need to be dressed by convention. But even, if you think about centuries ago, we still are very embarrassed to show our bodies to others, right? And even ourselves, some people have a lot of complex with their own bodies, right? And if you think that some centuries ago, women weren't even allowed to see themselves naked, they had to bathe themselves wearing clothes. Nowadays it's ridiculous, but this happened centuries ago. And even today, if there are some cultures that are very sensitive to showing skin or hair, especially towards women, even if you're very comfortable with your own body, you can feel uncomfortable when you're wearing something revealing. And I know I don't want to discriminate, but being a woman, I do feel women, unfortunately, are a lot more affected by this, right? There's this convention sometimes, this belief screaming in our heads, that's wrong. What in the world are you wearing? It's too revealing. Are you you don't want to call attention in the wrong way and things like this. So women, unfortunately, are a lot more affected, right? But let's be honest. How would you feel if you saw someone naked walking down the street? I really wanted you to think about it. You are walking down the street and someone is walking towards you not wearing any clothes. How would you feel? Shocked? Will be shocked? What would be your first reaction? Shock? Scared? What would you do? Would you call the police? Would you try to talk sense to that person? Would you run away? I want you to think that the person is not doing anything. She or he is not being offensive. He or she is not being aggressive, is not even interacting with anyone else. It's just walking down the street normally, okay? The only thing different about this person is the fact that it's not wearing any clothes, all right? So, is it really that bad? I mean, it's a person naked. It doesn't matter if it's a man, woman, or other. I know if it's a man and if you are a woman, you will probably be threatened, and we'll talk more about this, but it doesn't matter, okay? For the example, totally don't consider the sex. Okay, if a woman is less threatening to you, consider a woman, okay? The person is calm, okay? It's nothing you've never seen before. I'm sure you've seen people naked from both sexes, so there's nothing new there, all right? So why would you feel such strong emotions like fear? Fear is the strongest emotion there is. So being a woman, and if you're picturing a man, I can't imagine that the first thing you would do would be probably to walk away or even run away, right? No, I don't want that. You don't want any problems. You will feel fear. And when I was younger, that would probably be my first reaction as well. I do feel there's still much fear in women, probably imposed by centuries of torture and abuse by the opposite sex. There's one thing called collective consciousness, and it relates to the collective consciousness is basically the human consciousness as a whole. It's like we live in the same society, so we are all connected. Even if you live in a specific country nowadays with the internet and TV and all of that, we are living more and more in a global civilization and less in a specific culture, all right? And so we are affected by events, even if they are not present where we live. We see them, right? We know that there are many regions of the world that women still are forced to wear clothes that they cannot show anything from themselves. Otherwise, they will be punished or even brutally murdered. So, or tortured, which is even worse than murder, I feel. So, there's a lot of fear, especially in women, okay? I'm not saying men don't feel fear. Of course they do. But I do think it's different, right? Um, and honestly, today, I wouldn't know how I would react. I think I would have to be on a situation, but picturing the situation in my head, I think the first reaction I would have would be to laugh, like, oh my gosh, that person is naked. I wouldn't feel threatened. My first reaction would be, yeah, I would be surprised, not shocked, but surprised, and I would laugh. First and foremost, I would laugh, because that's usually the way I react when I'm presented with something out of the ordinary. I'm like, oh, okay, what's that? So it's my first reaction, followed by surprise and curiosity, right? Oh, why? I mean, I would think, why is that person naked? Wow. So wearing clothes is really just a convention. I would probably then take some time before I choose what I would do next. I would first observe the person, see if the person was interacting with other people. If we were alone in the same street, I would probably not stay. I would probably choose, no, I want to walk away, because, I mean, I don't know. I think it would depend. It would depend on other factors. I wouldn't say if I saw a person walking down the street, I would react a certain way. I think it would depend on the way the person was behaving, if I was in a crowded place or not. Of course, the gender of the person also would make a difference. If it was a man, I would react differently than if he was a woman. Yeah. It would depend on many factors, right? So, but truth is, and this is just what I wanted to, my point is, wearing clothes is really just a convention. Nothing bad comes out of it if you don't wear clothes. I mean, if that's the only thing you're doing, you're not even, I mean, yeah, you could get to prison, but you could get in trouble, but nothing wrong. I mean, you are not harming anyone, right? But it's a convention anyway. Just like the kind of clothes you should wear for different occasions. That's another convention, right? You dress in a way for a wedding, you dress another way for office work, another way to go to the beach. Some of these conventions have a purpose, right? When you wear the clothes you wear to the beach, they are meant to make you comfortable for that place. They should be adapted to the beach. I mean, you don't go to the beach wearing high heels or wearing heavy clothes, a raincoat or whatever, right? You take your swimsuit because you are near the sea and you want to be able to take a dive, I hope. It's okay if you don't, just saying. For me, it's impossible to go to the beach without diving in the ocean, but it's okay if you don't. I know some people are not the same way. But I'm assuming you'll take a swimsuit. I'm assuming you will take comfortable clothes, comfortable shoes, right? Because you're relaxing, you want to chill. Maybe sunglasses, something to protect you from the sun, whatever. Doesn't matter. But in other cases, the conventions are actually not based on practicability. If you think about it, usually if you work on an office, some jobs have dress codes, and I can understand dress codes. I mean, if you're wearing in customer service, I can understand the reason why there should be a convention, all right? Because people are expecting when they go to a store or a coffee shop, they are expecting people to be dressed in a certain way, so they can be identified right away. So I can understand why that is. But I can never understand people that work on offices needing to be wearing clothes that are really very uncomfortable just because, well, it's the way it should be. It doesn't make any sense for me. I remember when I was working in offices and, especially in women, again, I don't want to discriminate. I know men are not comfortable either, but wearing high heels or being forced to wear makeup all day, they're just so... It's another form of torture. And I'm not saying that ties are not uncomfortable, okay? I'm sure men also deal with a lot of things that are uncomfortable, okay? But I'm a woman, so I can only talk about what I know. And high heels, and for me, wearing makeup is really uncomfortable. My skin reacts and starts acting out if I wear makeup every day. even if it is good makeup, if I take good care of my skin, it's really a matter of putting too much products, chemicals on my skin. So, but why do force this? I mean, people don't work better if they are uncomfortable. Actually, it's the other way around. If you feel uncomfortable, your productivity will actually be lower. So in this case, what's the point of the convention? That's absolutely none whatsoever. Again, with the exception if you work in contact with the public, all right? But if no one is seeing you, if you don't work physically in customer service, right? Nobody is seeing the way you look, or just your coworkers or just your bosses. Like, what's the point in having a dress code? It's none whatsoever. People just follow it because, well, that's how it always has been. Everybody's doing it. And so, I don't want to be the one calling the others out or challenging the system, right? Well, I'm actually the other way around. These are the conventions I like to challenge. It's something that I take a special pleasure. And so when I worked in offices, I was the one not wearing makeup when all women were wearing makeup. I was the one wearing sneakers when everybody was wearing high heels. You couldn't, no. Those were, and I would be like really really demanding, in a sense, really strict, like, this doesn't make sense, so I will not follow it, and you cannot make me follow it. And another convention, for example, on some places in some companies here in Portugal, there's this culture of working late, of staying late, especially when you have a degree and you're working in a higher position. I noticed that, I worked many years in jobs, in office, in shops, restaurants, and all of that. And on those places, when it comes to a certain hour, you just leave. But it's one of the things that I was really shocked to understand when I start working. I took a degree, and that I start working in positions that were higher positions than I was working before. And I noticed that I couldn't leave on time. There was this imposed convention that people who have those positions, they have to work a lot more hours without being paid more for those hours. It's just everybody works more hours and there's no work hours. And I was like, no, that's not for me. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, when I'm working, I'm working. And when it's my time to leave, I leave. And because I have a life, I don't leave for my work. I don't leave for my job. Job is a part of my life, but my job is not my life. And I always had that really, really clear on my mind. And so I do feel, knowing the kind of person you want to be, you have your center. So these are my beliefs, and this is the person I want to be, or this is the person I am. And I always knew that I was never a person that was only about work. I was a person that, when I'm working, but I'm very fond of my free time, and I'm very fond of having time to hang out with the people that are special to me. And so I wouldn't let that convention apply to me. And I got bullied on some places I worked because, they wanted to impose that convention on me, and I was the one saying no. And in many places, I was the new worker saying no. And they're like, how dare you say no? And I'm like, no. And you know what? I may have been bullied, but I was also a lot more respected for that. A lot more respected. So this is the fun thing, not fun, but this is the interesting thing about challenging conventions, is that some people will dislike you. Some people will even have really strong feelings towards you. but you will also be a lot more respected, and some people will actually admire you and look towards you as an example. I remember in one company that I challenged that, the last company I worked as a mechanical engineer, I remember talking with well, he wasn't my boss directly, but he was a boss, and he was assuming I was taking some days off, and he was assuming that I would be working from home in my holidays and my time off. And I just like said to him no. And a colleague of mine was in the room with us, and I said no in a really respectable way. I actually was laughing. I was actually, but no, I mean, I'm taking time off. I'm not, I won't be working. And the guy, the boss was so stunned by my answer, because he's so used to people working on vacations. So he was so stunned by my answer, but aren't you taking your laptop with you? And no, I'm not taking my laptop with me. The laptop belongs to the company. I won't take the laptop with me. And if I was supposed to be working, if I wanted to be working, I wouldn't be taking time off. Time off is for me to be resting. It's not for me to be working. And I remember being even smiling when I was saying this, and the guy was so stunned. He was like, okay. He didn't even know what to say. And my colleague was standing right behind him, and I remember him. He was just listening to the conversation and look, oh my gosh, I can't believe she said that. But he was just thinking that. You could see that on his face. And then that was the conversation, and that was it. And the guy was like, oh, okay. Oh, well, I guess I see you next week then. And okay, that was it. And then I didn't tell anyone, but my colleague shared that story with all the company, because apparently that boss had that history of demanding other workers to work on holidays and on time off. And so suddenly I became a star in the and truth is, I had some people came to me saying, oh, I heard that you said that to Guilherme, I think it was his name, Guilherme, and oh my gosh, can you believe? And then people would come to me and share some experiences they had. I had a coworker who was sharing the experience she had, that she took some time off and she had a whole vacation planned with her husband. She had flight tickets and hotels, everything paid, and the guy forced her to work because something came up, and she had to cancel. She lost the money from the flight and all of that. And I remember telling him, you're silly. Why would you do that? I mean, but he said it was important. No, but you should learn how to say no. So me stepping up on that case, I became kind of the star of the hero. It's a story. It was so interesting. And I do feel I was actually brave enough to do it, because I was ready. Back then I was already starting working on my music career, and I was making some money as a musician. So I was already transitioning from mechanical engineering to music. And so, if they wanted to fire me, go ahead and fire me. I don't care. But I was very sure of what I wanted. And one thing I wanted was my time off, and I didn't want to work on my time off. So it's a good example how, I challenged a convention, and I was actually a hero for challenging it. And I didn't even did anything for that to happen. My coworker was just the one who spread the story, and I became a myth on that company or something. So this is just an example to show you how sometimes when you challenge conventions and you stay true to yourself, I think that's the thing. It's not challenging conventions just because. It's challenging conventions because you know who you are, you know where your values lie, and so you stay true to yourself. And if you stay true to yourself, you will be, I'm not saying that you will admire. I'm not admired by everyone. I'm not saying that you won't get into trouble, all right? The thing is, you will be appreciated for like-minded people, and you will even set an example for people who are afraid, and secretly they actually think like you do, but they are afraid to express it. They are embarrassed. They are not confident enough to express it. So maybe they need someone to take the first step. And if you take the first step, the people who are ready will follow you and will be inspired by you. And so I do feel that's priceless. That's priceless. I'm telling that story, and it's something that warms me up inside. And I'm proud of myself for standing up that way. I didn't always did it. And many times I worked hours that I didn't want to work. So when I finally was able to find my voice and I communicated my boundaries in a really healthy and respectable way, in a way that I stayed true to myself. So I didn't cause a scene. I didn't fight. I didn't use an aggressive tone. I just said no in a polite manner. And so I'm very proud for having achieved that. And I'm sure you can too. All right. Because I spent many years working hours that I didn't want to work. So yay, yay me. And you should celebrate being able to stay true to yourself, even if it's a convention that apply to dozens or thousands of other people, okay? Be true to yourself. Stay true to yourself. Stay true to your values and what's important to you. I'm not saying you should go outside naked, okay? I'm just saying you should dare to think about what makes sense to you as an individual person. If you want to choose to go around naked, there are many places you can do that, because many people also agree that there's a convention that's a convention that don't make sense to them as individuals. And there are places that it can express that. There's nothing wrong with it. All right? So this is my challenge to you. Think about what conventions do you currently follow, and think about past decisions that you made that you felt, oh, I think I was influenced by the convention. Maybe maybe now it doesn't make sense to me, or maybe I should do different. Remember, there's always time for change, all right? Doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter your life situation, you can always change it. You can always turn it around, okay? Don't focus on things that don't make sense to you. Focus on the alternatives and discovering yourself and discovering what makes sense to you as an individual person. All right. So that's all I have for you guys today. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, don't forget to comment, leave a like, share, do whatever you want. If you have suggestions for future streamings or future teams, send me an email. I'm at mail@sandralorenco.pt. All right. See you next week.